Hi everyone, it's Diane, and I have completed these two blue journals. I have not finished these. I'm going to be working on these today and tomorrow. So I will list them all together, and I'm hoping to be able to list them Friday. But we'll see how much work I can get done in the next couple of days. I have just finished up all of the details on these two journals, so I can show them to you. And we'll go from there. So this one is called Cherish. I'm going to, there are folds in this seam binding from where it was wrapped around the card, so I'm going to wet it and crinkle it up, and hopefully that will take care of all of that. But I didn't want to wet it before the video because I have to have time for it to dry. So here is the cover. I'm going to pretend that you didn't watch all of the craft with me process videos, because I don't always watch the process video. Sometimes I just watch the finished product video because I don't have time to watch every video on YouTube. So anyway, this was made with an old Bobbsey Twins book. Both of these books were, which were given to me. And I covered, this is the front cover, and I covered the image with this digital wallpaper printout. Use Mod Podge. There's some lace here. This is new lace. This is vintage lace that I used a seam ripper on and got it off of a collar. And then this is antique lace here. And this is antique lace. With this coloration is natural aging. I did not dye this. This is coffee dyed muslin, and I stamped the word Cherish on it. There's a little piece of fabric under here and some fabric here with music notes on it. A vintage crocheted doily in blue and a vintage button. This is also vintage, maybe from the 70s, and it's a piece of collage paper. Cheryl had sent me a whole packet of these images of different types of images that were made for decoupage. So it has 3 signatures. There's fabric on the spine and chipboard and Tyvek to strengthen it. I created a new spine for the book. I left the end paper because it was just so beautifully aged, and I loved it. It looks like it's coffee dyed. I put this blue printed ribbon here. You can see a little bit of black underneath it because someone had scribbled. This was the top of the back cover, and I think someone's name or the library or something was there and they blacked it out. But you can still see a little bit of it. There's some fabric on the inside and some lace. There are 3 signatures, as I said, and I was influenced by Rachel from Roxy Creations. I will link her channel below, and also there are a lot of her digitals in here from her doilies and linens and embroideries that she scans. And there are a lot of other digitals. I'm not going to talk about every digital. Because there's such a variety in here. I just had a lot of stuff printed, and I pulled from what I had printed. So here's a glassine bag and some music paper that I inked, and then an image here, and one of the napkin Mod Podged tags that we did this on video. There's a book page and then a napkin on top of it. Some lace on the edge there. This is a Tim Holtz botanical, and I just glued it on as a little tuck spot. This has coffee dyed paper sewn on the back. This is one of Christie's doilies, crocheted doilies that she scanned, and it's got a very pale blue background. This is a vintage sheet. Oh, excuse me. A vintage sheet with blue roses on it, and a little piece of Moda fabric and some trim up here. Very dainty, delicate trim. There's a bit of stamping in here. This came from a book about Victorian pop-up cards. One of Rachel's digis. There's a printed tab I printed out on cardstock. And this also, Rachel's digis for the linens also come with postcards and other kinds of vintage images. So you get a nice eclectic mix when you purchased those digis. There's a square coffee dyed doily. This is a Tim Holtz paper here with a printable that I cut out, or maybe somebody sent that to me. There's a digi. A vintage book page. I had to reinforce it. This is from Ephemera's Vintage Garden, and it's called Ephemeral Garden, and it's got lined papers. So I just used quite a few sheets of that in these books, and maybe in the second set of books too, I can't remember. There's a tag that I printed. This is a vintage address book page. Vintage, digital script page. I did a lot of inking on pages because there were a lot of white pages. This is a stamp of a lady from the 1920s. Vintage graph paper. I probably am going to take the paper clips and alcohol ink them. I just didn't do that yet. I'll probably do all of them when I do the other book too. There's a lady and a cameo stamp. Vintage lace here. No, that's not vintage. That's Hobby Lobby. Oop. This is a lined printable that you can write on. This, tucked into this little pocket, is a vintage City Market ticket or something, receipt, 1918. This book has 2 vintage items in it, at least 2, and I haven't put them in the other book yet. I have to remember to do that. There's some fabric stitched along the edge of that page, a printable glued there. This is also a printable, this butterfly. Here's the other vintage item. It's a 1898 calendar page. That's my birthday month. August's sleepy charm is on me, and I will not break the spell, by E. Nesbit. She wrote children's books. You can see the aged look to the back of it. I didn't do anything to it. Such a pretty little card. Looks like some clover there. Second signature has a pocket on the front. I sewed this beautiful library card lady onto this script card from Rachel's shop, and then made a tag to stick in there. This is an Edith Holden page, and I have a printable envelope on here. Oh, I have to ink the inside of that flap. And there's a floral or a fabric collage here with some pretty pale yellow lace and some vintage fabrics. This is a digital paper. Map page, digital, and this is a place card I got at the, I think it's Salvation Army, and this is a Victorian ladies Currier and Ives playing card. It's a vintage card. Got it at an antique shop last week. This was a book about artists. This page is about Paul Cézanne. Some digital receipts, some craft paper with a stamped lady. These books were so fun to make. There's a digital tag. Here's one of Rachel's digital linens. Here's a white paper sack that I inked and put this image on. A decoupage tag. Just a sheet of paper folded that you can write on. And a printable of lilacs. There's a little scrap of one of Rachel's digitals, the crocheted lace, and I put it on as a little pocket. These came from Lindsay Zenore's shop, Nevermore Creations. They're great for when you need something skinny. vintage sheet stitched on here and a little scrap from a vintage table runner. This is one of the vintage images you get with the linen packs. I made a tag to tuck in there. I stitched her to some light blue cardstock so that she would stand out from the background page. Vintage fabric here. This we did this on video, but it's just a printable. I think it's from Tsunami Rose. Printable vintage receipt, and I wadded it all up a couple of times to make it nice and soft, and then inked it with a couple of different colors of distress ink. I used vintage photo and antique linen. Vintage pink tissue paper or tracing paper. I used one of the ephemeral garden pages and folded it and cut it and made it into a tag shape, so you can write on the back of that, and I just slipped it over the edge of the page. Took two printables and sewed them together with a little piece of yellow velvet ribbon, vintage velvet ribbon in there. Put a printable postcard inside. This is one of the Tim Holtz pages. This was a cut-off scrap, and so I just scored it on the lines and made a little booklet, and you can journal in there. And there is a little printable tag inside. It's so cute. This is a glassine bag with a Tim Holtz paper and a little printable label. And then I did this on camera too, or part of it on camera anyway. Two different digital images that I sewed together and then sewed on as a little tuck spot. And this is an index card that I coffee dyed and then Mod Podged a napkin to. And there is the back end paper with the beautiful aging on it. And there's that book. That one is called Cherish. This book is called Bonjour, and it does have a collage again on it. There's some vintage music paper behind, some vintage trim, and a vintage button there that is so pretty. The antique lace. This is antique lace here. This is a printable. This is vintage lace. And again, we have a lot of the same type of things in this book. They're not identical, but very similar. I just put some washi tape in the middle of this page to give it some color. You might hear a snowblower outside. We're getting snow today. I wonder if that's my neighbor doing my driveway. Or he doesn't do my driveway, he does my front sidewalk, which is great. A vintage sheet here. Some journaling spots. This beautiful lace. I think someone sent that to me. This came out of a book about Victorian servants. I used my EK Success edge punch for that edge there on this vintage graph paper. Someone sent this to me. I think it's a stationery page. So pretty. I'm glad I used it. I've been hoarding it. But this is a perfect book for it. There's some stamping there. This again I wadded up and made it look old. One of Rachel's printables. There's a printable that I fussy cut. Piece of paper that I folded, tucked in there. An Edith Holden page and an envelope. This one I did remember to ink. There's another fabric collage there. Very interesting book page. This is a scrap of that pink tracing paper. This is a vintage bias tape. There's a decoupage tag in there, folded up piece of graph paper, and a printable. There's lots of decoration in these, but also lots of room for writing. There's a piece of vintage lace crochet trim there. This was wadded up and distressed. There's some vintage yellow velvet ribbon there. Again, this is a tag, a folded tag made with ephemeral garden paper. This is just a scrap of Tim Holtz paper. You can write on that. This Tim Holtz paper is too pretty to throw away any scraps. This one I have to punch and put seam binding in. I stamped on the back side of this and it went through there. This little sticker came from a Daphne's Diary and it said made by me. And it was the perfect color for this, so I used it, wrote my name on it. Okay, so those are the two, Cherish and Bonjour. And when I get the other two done, these will be listed in my shop, and I will let you know. When I do the flip through of the other two, I will also let it be known that these will also be in my shop. Now I'm going to get to work on these two journals. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back. Bye-bye.